Welcome, delegates, clergy, and friends of the Diocese of Rio Grande to my October fireside chat, talking to you about the highlights of our 62nd annual convention, which will take place in October 16th to the 18th in Las Cruces. This is my fireside chat, but you might have noticed there is no fire in the fireplace. It just happens to be too warm today for a fire, so I'll have to ask you to imagine the fire behind me. It is October 3rd, the day before the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, and I am sitting here at my home welcoming you to this brief report that I'd like to make to you. So I ask you to go and get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Pause the video for a moment, and we will then go through some of the highlights of the next convention we will gather in Las Cruces. I speak to you, friends, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Happily reporting to you that much work has been accomplished in preparing for our convention in Las Cruces. As you know, diocesan conventions are a time in which the family of God, a diocese, gathers together to not only renew friendships and also to join together, celebrating the wonderful gifts and accomplishments of God's blessings that we have received in this diocese. It is a time for us also to look at our diocesan budget, a time for us to cast an eye, if you will, on the overall picture of the Diocese of the Rio Grande here in 2014, moving into 2015. The focus theme of this convention is Holy Living, Holy Dying, and the title suggests that it is our entire lives that we offer to the Lord Jesus and to His Church as we live faithfully, exercising our ministries and witnessing to Christ's presence in the world. Holy living, holy dying, transforming life, faith, and money for the common good is the spiritual theological focus. And this focus will be sharpened for us by the Reverend Canon Lance Owsley. Father Owsley is the canon for stewardship and development in the Diocese of Olympia, and he has been one of these keynote speakers around the country who has not only stimulated great conversations and sharpened the focus of what does it mean to be a Christian in this 21st century. How is it that the Church is doing its mission in each of us dioceses and parishes, congregations, in particular geographical areas? How are we remaining faithful? His focus is stewardship, which I have emphasized in this diocese, that we are stewards of God's goodness, stewards of God's grace, stewards of God's provisions. But the focus I like to use is that we are custodians. We are the ones that not only care for, but enable those provisions to be used for the common good of God's people, for the common good of the rich and poor, young and old, sick and healthy, for the common good of all God's people. So we will be focusing on that particular theme in our convention. We will have two keynote addresses, which following that we will have a choice to enter different conversation groups with particular foci, if you will, on a particular issue related to stewardship. So I will encourage you to be prepared, and in doing so I am hoping that you have looked at the last diocesan paper together. This is our convention issue. In this issue, you will find the entire budget detailed with a commentary, as well as you will find the canons that we will be addressing, since there'll be some changes, amendments, if you will, to several canons that the Standing Committee, Council, and trustees have found important for us to present to this particular convention. So here are some of the highlights I'd like to talk to you about this morning. And first and foremost, certainly is the highlight, the great accomplishment and celebration of Camp Stony this past summer season. As many of you know, there is a new structure to the way in which we do camp, if you will. And that structure is we have approached the deaneries, the dean and clergy and laity, to work on a particular theme for each camp season, for each camp week. And we have encouraged clergy and laity to actually be the staff at camp. This has provided for an administrative shift that we have made, and that administrative shift has been for us to reduce the cost of what it would be for a child to attend camp. This year, because of the deaneries being able also to help fund each camper, and also funds from the diocese, and encouraging clergy and parishes to set aside in their own budgets some resources and funds for children and young adults coming to camp. We have brought children and young adults to camp for $125, which is for the entire week, program, supplies, and meals. That is unprecedented, as now I have learned throughout the United States in the Episcopal Church camps, because in fact at EYE I attended the Camp and Conference seminar and was asked to speak about how we were able to reduce the cost, which is the major inhibitor for kids attending camp. It certainly is that, but much more. It's also the exciting themes and what camp will provide for what kids are interested in today. We have had a successful camp in recent memory, as one of our trustees put it. Camp has never ended in the black, but this season we have ended in the black, and in fact it was a full season of each of the camps being filled with young adults and with children. So I am very grateful to Canon Gutierrez, to Father Doug Bliley, to all the clergy, to all the deaneries and laity, for the amount of work that has been put in to remake, if you will, camping in Bishop's Ridge. Also, I want to thank all the parents who have entrusted their children to our care, and assure you that this year was wonderful, next year will be even better, and the years coming better. We will work very hard because youth is a priority, a pastoral priority for me and for the diocese. It is for council, it is for standing committee, and I know it is for all the clergy and laity of congregations. The second highlight is the Bosque Center, and those of you who are following very closely know that the Bosque Center is alive and well, in full swing of receiving groups every week and every weekend, sizes from 25 to 125. The Bosque Center is been growing in terms of establishing more administrative personnel to accommodate a good Christian hospitality of warmth and receptivity, and also provide all of our buildings to accommodate the needs of people. As you know, this center is more than just a conference and retreat center. It is the very place in which evangelization of this diocese is taking place in a very creative way. There are many people that come to the Bosque Center who are not Episcopalians. They may be unchurched. They may be people looking for a church. And because we are reaching out, serving the needs of groups in New Mexico and throughout the United States, Canon Gutierrez and I have been able to attract groups from the National Church to use Camp Bosque Center, and it has been very successful. So I ask you to keep your prayers in mind for the hospitality that we exercise in the Bosque Center and the evangelization that we are attentive to in all the work that's been done there. The Borderlands Ministry, and we have used the term borderlands because in fact the border between Mexico and Texas is very long, and there are various areas, various parishes of which borderland ministries are taking place. Those entail feeding people who are immigrants, those who are poor. It entails clothing. It entails having information, health issues, legal issues, housing. Most importantly, it is the gospel of Jesus Christ, embracing the poor and assisting those who are broken. We have just passed through a very challenging time in the United States, as you know, with the swell of immigrants coming over the border, and heartbreaking stories of children and women who have had to be put up in storage houses to accommodate processing them, some of which were turned back to their countries. Well, the Borderland Ministry's emphasis that we have had is to meet the basic needs. The need of welcome the stranger, the needs of feeding the stranger, the need of clothing the stranger. We have not looked through the political eyes of law, of government, if you will, to understand who these people are. We have served them because they simply have arrived. And I am very grateful to many people, especially Sue Hutchins, Canon McNellis, Canon Emeritus, to the board who has been working to enable the Borderland Ministries, and to all of you, people of the Diocese of Rio Grande. Your generosity has been extraordinary. When the word goes out that we need clothing, we need blankets, we need food, we need money, whatever the resources are that have been used for the Borderland Ministry in meeting those needs, you have been extremely generous. Certainly this diocese is a mission-oriented diocese. We are conscious of the Matthew 25 mandate to fulfill Christ's ministry to his poor and to his needy. And I'm very grateful to all of you for that. When we come to conventions, one of the, as I always say, mundane things we need to do, but it certainly is a necessary thing to do, it is a spiritual also focus, is to address the budget and to be assured that the budget is serving the needs of the diocese. Those priorities of needs of the diocese are coming from the deaneries, and they are needs of which we have identified we as Episcopalians serve among the many needs that are served by other communities, secular and religious. So I asked Lisa Katz-Ricker, who works in our office and is the financial manager, to give me some things I could say to you, some reports, some highlights, some financial highlights over the last year. And she wrote to me saying that I could say that Fair Share continues to increase with close to a 5% increase in 2013. Now that 5% increase means that there are two things. Either more people coming and or people are giving even more generously for the mission, for the ministries, for the work of Christ, in deaneries, in the diocese, in the church as a whole. She also said that combined revenues from all sources, excluding property transactions, increased by 16% in 2013. Now, those revenue sources are also focused on the Bosque Center as well as Bishop's Ridge. You have heard me say before that my hope had been and is that the Bosque Center would generate revenues beyond the revenues that would facilitate its operations, but revenues that in time would be able to be put into our diocesan budget to be used for the ministries and mission of the diocese. Revenues that our own fair share offerings and stewardship offerings cannot meet because of the great demands. Well, in time, certainly those revenues will be realized. The other revenue that I'm looking at is the revenue of Bishop's Ridge. Because Bishop's Ridge, now that it has had a whole makeover, if you will, we have renovated all the buildings there so that it can be marketed for groups. It is another source, another place of evangelism for this diocese. Evangelization to those who are not familiar with either the church at large, the Christian faith, or those who are displaced, unchurched. When they come to either the Bosque Center or to Bishop's Ridge, it is the first meeting, if you will, with those people of faith who operate these places. So Bishop's Ridge also will be a revenue increase in which will suffice its operations so that it runs in the black and is fully staffed. But in time, those revenues, I'm hoping and praying, will be enough to be used for more campers who are unable to attend, poor children whose parents could never afford even $125, poor children who can't afford even to go to such a place as a week of camp. So I'm hoping that those revenue sources will increase, and they are increasing, as this report has said. Programmatic initiatives to serve young adults, the homeless, and our borderland and Native American ministries expanded in 2013. And those expansions we are celebrating because, in fact, there is more of an awareness in each of our parishes, more of awareness on the diocesan level, both in far west Texas and in New Mexico, that in fact these initiatives are working for our youth, for the homeless, for borderland, and for our American ministries, Native American ministries. She goes on to say, and I've already mentioned our conference centers, the Bishop's Ridge, Bosque Center, are up and running, generating revenues. She writes, serving the mission and surpassing all expectations towards becoming self-sufficient. That has been our goal, and the goal is being realized, and the goal will continue to be realized because of the stewardship responsibilities that we have taken on as a diocese, conscious of Christ's mission, conscious of Christ's ministries. The Diocese of the Rio Grande, beyond the budget, is a diocese that I say is a fair share diocese, a covenanted diocese. I have been talking to both the Standing Committee and Diocesan Council and the trustees about this concept that fair share needs to be disabused of what people think it is, i.e., some think it's a tax, some think that these monies are only to operate the diocesan offices. The Diocese of the Rio Grande is a fair share covenanted diocese, and the covenant that we make in the offerings that each parish gives is for the whole mission of the diocese. All these particular things that are going on in the diocese, and there is a listing of them because you will find it in your packets. I have decided to write up a description of, or should I say a description that answers the question, what does fair share do for me? What does fair share, what do we get out of it? These are the comments that I have heard from some of our laity, and happily I want to be able to show and demonstrate how fair share is used. But this covenanted offering that we make is an integral part to the success and celebrations that are happening in the diocese. And I know that some congregations have to struggle, and you do. And I know that some congregations work very hard to be sure that the top priority is the entire mission of Christ in our diocese. And fair share is at the top of that priority in your own diocese, in your own parish budgets. But the diocesan budget, of course, relies on fair share. It relies on these other resources that are now in effect happening for us, and relies on the stewardship consciousness, the custodial consciousness that we have as Christians and as Christian communities to serve all of God's people. You've heard me say, and I say it a number of times, that I came to this diocese, there were 58 congregations, and today there are 63. And some of those 5 other congregations were in fact here in the diocese. They were in the rural areas. Some were somewhat asleep, others were just waking up, that they also are members, are part of the body of the Diocese of the Rio Grande. They are congregations that are emerging, we say, in staff and in council and in standing committee. And these emerging congregations, I am going to continue to not only visit, as I have in these past years, but ensure that these congregations have clergy to celebrate Eucharist each and every Sunday. Because some of our retired clergy who have come into our diocese willingly have received their license to minister to these small emerging mission congregation in rural areas, these congregations are growing, and someday will be full mission churches and or parish congregations, as we have these distinctions in our canons. I want to talk to you lastly, before I close, because these are just some of the highlights. Of course, there are many more, and you will see those and hear about those highlights as you attend convention. I want to talk to you about health issues. We are in a moment in this country, in this world, in which viruses, bacterial infections are on an increase, and medicine is having its challenges in dealing with viruses and bacteria that are resistant to the drugs that we have developed. Ebola has emerged in Africa, now spreading, has come to the United States. But I need to say to you that this is not a time for us to be panicked. It is not a time for us to be despondent. It is a time now for us to be conscious of health issues. And being conscious of health issues means being conscious of your own personal health and your own personal well-being in terms of safeguarding that you do not become infected with cold viruses or other sicknesses. We as communities and as a community of the diocese need to be conscious of health issues, of sanitation in our parishes, on Sunday morning, at our coffee hours, in how we have our premises clean and sanitary, for the well-being of all those who congregate in community. This convention, we will be emphasizing health issues. Holy living is an emphasis on wholeness, on good living, healthy living. Holy dying is that bracket, if you will, that it's a whole life in which we are conscious of our health in Christ, our health with each other in this world, remaining healthy in body, in soul, and in spirit. So I ask you to be attentive to the health issues for yourself as well as for your parish. If you have a cold, please do not go to work. Please do not go to your vestry meeting or bishop's committee meeting. Please do not come to church on Sunday morning. Be careful and attentive to not spreading any viruses that you may have or any colds. We are in the cold season. I hope that you all got your flu shot, as I have, and those at my age. I hope you have your pneumonia shot and shingles shot. My dear people, simply be attentive to health issues. Tomorrow is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, and he has always been one of my favorite saints, and I know he is a favored saint in this New Mexico and far west Texas, very conscious of St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi said to his brothers and his sisters, and this is a quote, "Our job is to lift up people's hearts and give them reasons for spiritual joy." I believe that this is a statement that could be or should be the mandate for the Church of Jesus Christ as a whole. Our job, our ministries, our lives is to lift up people's hearts, to lift those hearts to the presence of the living God, and to give people reasons for joy, for happiness, and for hope. The gospel of Jesus Christ is a gospel of hope, is a gospel of love. It is a gospel that calls people into community, calls people to be attentive to the common good. This year, we focus at our convention on holy living, holy dying, transforming life, faith, and money for the common good in the Diocese of the Rio Grande. My dear people, God bless you. I look forward to seeing you at convention. Stay healthy and live strong in the Spirit of Jesus Christ.